It's Spoilerin time, the show where we take the hard work of cord killers figuring out how to watch things, watch them, and talk about them. This week, we will be talking about Time Bandits, the movie, Squid Game, Season 1, Episode 3, and Miami Vice, One-Eyed Jack, a Season 1 episode of Miami Vice starring Edward James Olmos, not even as a guest star anymore, but as a newly recurring character on the series. I'm Tom Merritt. He's Brian Brushwood.
Hey, man. More importantly, we have Bryce Castillo here, and I want to know on our buffet what we're jumping in on first.
Shall we begin with the Criterion Collection, Time Bandits? Brian, this was your pick for us to watch. So set it up. Why did you want us to watch Time Bandits?
Time Bandits is a movie that is bonkers at all levels. It features Monty Python alumni, directed by Terry Gilliam. The money for it came from the Beatles' George Harrison. It features one of the all-time greatest villains, David Warner, who went on to play villain after villain after villain all the way up through Titanic and probably beyond. It's got H.R. Giger inspired imagery. It's this surreal postmodern apocalypse of nothing but these 4 to 5 minute vignettes that involve a band of 7 little people who worked for God and but only on low level jobs, and they did a sloppy job. And but they had a map of all of the gaps, and they decided they wanted to be criminals. So they go through time and space, and they do go through time and space, where they keep encountering different versions of John Cleese and Shelley Duvall and Sean freaking Connery. It features Kenny Baker. You may know him as R2-D2. It's everything from Agamemnon. The more I'm saying these words, the more I don't believe it exists, and then I end up watching it again and again and again and again. And in fact, I have to confess that I started to watch it again for this, and I said, Brian, you have seen this movie 40 plus times since you first saw it in 2nd grade in the movie theater. You watched it a week and a half ago on a lark. You probably know this movie okay. You probably don't have to watch it again.
I will say, yeah, you probably didn't need to. It's not that complicated of a movie.
What were your 2 expectations going into this? What did you know?
Let me go first, and then Bryce's, because I think they're quite different, and mine seems to flow out of yours, Brian. Which is, I saw this. I never saw it in the theater. Still haven't. I saw it on VHS. Once it came to the GET video store in Greenville, I rented it, took it home, watched it. Remember thinking it was great. Like, oh, it's got the Monty Python guys. And I remember being really fascinated to see Kenny Baker, because I don't think I'd actually seen Kenny Baker in video as Kenny Baker, not in the R2-D2 costume. I'd seen pictures and stuff. And I remember enjoying it. And then I watched it again, I think probably in the 90s in college at some point. And I remember being very confused because I thought I was going to watch Baron von Munchausen again.
Oh, yeah.
and I had picked up Time Bandits by accident. And I was like, where's the balloon in this that second time through? So I definitely have an appreciation for it. I haven't watched it 40 times, so I don't quite have that much appreciation for it, but I definitely have an appreciation for it. And watching it this time, years and years later, right? It's been more than 20 years since I saw it. I was like, this is Star Wars. This is a movie that is brilliant in so many ways. And I have to keep forgiving it for its age. And I do. And I don't regret doing it. But there were more things stuck out about it because I haven't watched it as often as I've actually watched Star Wars: A New Hope, where I'm like, this is what people talk about when they're like, I don't know, I can see the strings. And that effect seems kind of dated, because these effects are pretty amazing for the time as well. But, they don't hold up as well as they did. That said, it's still great. It's still funny. It's still got that great Monty Python humor, because you've got most of them, basically all the living members of Monty Python minus Eric Idle. You got Palin in there. You got Gilliam directing. You've got John Cleese. So yeah, I mean, it appeared more dated than I expected, I think would be my bottom line, but I had a good time.
Uh, on my most recent watch, before I hand it over to Bryce, I was surprised at how perfectly YouTubed this was. Nothing goes more than 5 minutes long. You are never more than 5 minutes away from something completely else and bonkers, which I think was very forward thinking for 1982.
Yeah. That's a really good point because this is the kind of movie where I could have started to pick up my phone, could have started drifting, but I never did. Right. I kind of felt like maybe I would, and I never did because it was always like, oh, we've moved on. Great. I got to pay attention again.
Yeah.
I pretty quickly tuned out of this movie.
Oh,
I was not familiar. I really did not do any looking into it beforehand, and it was once they go into the first world that I was like, oh, this is all just a framing device so we can do a bunch of historical skits, which is fine, but I'm not a Monty Python fan really, and so I viewed it through that lens, which was, oh, this is not really like a story. This is just kind of an excuse to go through place and place and place, which is I think is fine if that's the thing that you're into.
but enough about Scott Pilgrim. Let's talk about Time Bandits.
Well, and what's funny is Life of Brian and Monty Python's Holy Grail are even less of a movie. Time Bandits is a coherent story.
Sure, there's a through line.
Yeah. Where to me it was like, oh, like what if the Monty Python crew made a movie instead of like making fun of making a movie, which is what they had done before. And I feel like Time Bandits was the first time they ever did that.
Yeah. And so I did have a little bit of feeling of wanting at the end when realizing this was a pretty 1, 2, 3 plot. They steal the map, running from the guy, they beat the bad guy. Oh, the other bad guy's actually the good guy, and then they killed the kid's parent. Like the ending it's very strange. I'm not very familiar or experienced with the Monty Python stuff, but I know it is not necessarily my flavor, and so I think I was not primed enough to watch a movie in this structure. And I acknowledge that is very much a Bryce baggage I bring, not necessarily a thing of the movie.
What's funny is I was in the exact same position when I first saw it in second grade, and yet to me it was enchanting and strange. You know, those exact same reasons were because I had never seen anything like that, and I did see it in the movie theater. I don't think my parents knew what they were taking us to, but
like it's a kids movie. Yeah.
There a couple of goodies. There are some beautifully haunting visuals during all of this. It was playground gossip lore that those moon gates, the holes in time, they bore a strong resemblance, if you ever played Ultima, to the moon gates in that game. And the story going around the playground was that Lord British got the idea from Time Bandits, and I realize now at the age of 46, I don't know why I just realized this, but I could pick up the phone and call Richard Garriott and ask him if that's true now.
I think you said you were going to do that last week.
Yeah, I still haven't. I need to though. but was there any visual vignette that stuck out the most to you, Tom?
Not really. No, I was more on the perspective of oh, this does. I remember it as this beautiful Dune-like cinematic event, and so I was sitting there going like, oh, this doesn't really look as good as I remember it. You know, it's like walking into the gymnasium, you know, after 20 years and going, I remember this as being bigger when I was 6 years old, kind of effect. So I didn't have anything stick out to me. What about you, Bryce?
Not particularly. Yeah, I thought this was not did not really strike me very. I think the character design, costume design were very good, but in terms of large open space, I didn't I certainly don't remember anything particular.
I will say that when they first arrive, when our hero first arrives in Greece. Yep. And he's out in the desert with the bull. That is still very arresting.
Yeah, with the Minotaur battle with Agamemnon and that stuff.
And you've got that huge desert shot. That's pretty amazing.
To me, it's so many rich costumes and two last points. Number one, David Warner somehow sold the hell out of, I mean, the same dude who played Sark the same year sells the hell out of evil in that ridiculous costume. It's amazing. That and oh doggone it! No, I lost it. I had forget it. That's it.
The other thing I wondered if some people watching this would think is what I will tell you after Brian tells you what he remembered.
Okay, Sean Connery, very serviceable sleight of hand. He does as a magician. I really looked, and I'm like, that is a good French drop. That is a good manipulation. This is all done in one shot. That means he really did it. He did a good job.
Oh, nice. Good to know. Yeah, no, I was going to say, I wonder how many people would watch this and think like, oh, Bill and Ted did this better later.
Oh,
And I think Bill and Ted owe a lot to Time Bandits, to be honest.
Yeah,
I can see that.
although, yeah. Man, I'm so glad. I'm glad we visited it and talked about it. I'm sad that it clearly is partly just an artifact of nostalgia in my heart that makes me love it so much. But cordkillers@gmail.com.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
I mean, it didn't land with you the way it did.
So what?
That's fine.
That doesn't make. I'm not the final judge of it.
know,
You love it enough to make us watch it, share it with us.
I wanted to believe that the vignettes were an especially special blend of bizarre that would amaze, and it's see, like I directed you to what turned out to be an okay magic show, not a mind-blowing magic show.
Well, and a magic show that when it first was performed in the 80s, there was nothing like it, right?
Right.
But yeah. Now there's other people keep ripping off that magic show, and it doesn't feel as special anymore. All right, that is Time Bandits. Let's talk about Squid Game, Season 1, Episode 3. We are back in the game, and this time the police officer has successfully infiltrated and is sort of wandering around in disguise, spying on the game. And we also get our second game, which is the Dalgona game, where you get a Dalgona cookie that's made of melted sugar, and you have to use a pin to cut out a shape. Our hero's best friend sort of throws him under the bus by letting him pick the hardest shape to possibly do, the umbrella. But Guillaume is able to figure out that if you lick the Dalgona from the back, it'll dissolve the part with the pattern faster, and just barely survives, as do most of our main characters. We also get a little conversation in the dorm area where we get a little more background on all the characters like Ali and the old man. Brian, what'd you think?
Confession, two things I must never do is number one, I every time we talk about Squid Game, I get really excited. I go right home and I watch Squid Game, and then a week passes, and then I realize, oh my God, it's been a whole week since I watched that. So I must wait or to watch Squid Game. But number two, Netflix got me with their tricky, sneaky auto playing the next thing because I watched it and I loved it, and then and then for some reason the logo was on again, and then I realized I was like 15 minutes into the next episode because it just auto played.
Oh.
So I don't know for certain when things end.
And you know what? I will say we're both watching on the dub. If you were watching on sub, that wouldn't have happened. You would have noticed the end of the episode.
Yes, that is correct.
I'm assuming because it's very fast. It's that 5 seconds before while the credits are going is very fast. I think it's easy to be looking the other way and go, oh, this episode's still going. This is a good long episode, huh?
And on that subject, props to the subs. Subs, I'm still enjoying. I thought I would flip over at some point. Or sorry,
you
dubs.
mean the dubs?
Yeah, dubs.
Yeah. Dubs and subs.
I would love to.
The only other thing I mentioned all the things that actually happened in this episode.
Right.
So the other things that I didn't mention were the Sebyuk, the North Korean girl, and the Minyo, the other woman in the bathroom, kind of like trying to figure out what's going on.
Poke around the
And
edges.
yeah, and so she's able to climb up into the ducks and see that they're melting the sugar, so she knows ahead, which is how Jun Ho knows, but doesn't tell his best friend supposedly, Giyun. And there's a guy who gets a message in a bun, and seems to know what's coming next.
So this everything you've said so far is making me realize, because we're on episode 3 of what, 8 or 10?
9, I believe.
Yeah. How important information asymmetry is in this series, because we have kind of call them good guys, bad guys, whatever. Probably they'll all team up at the end. But we have different teams figuring out different parts of the puzzle. And in the case of a business school debt guy refusing to tell a deadbeat dad guy 456, to warn him, that's a case where the only thing, his crime was just knowing how this game works and knowing whether or not it would be a good or bad idea to pick that shape. But likewise, we have two things. We have the bad team solving the problem with a sneaked in,
A smuggled lighter. Yeah.
correct. So
Smuggled in the crotch of one of our characters.
that's correct. But more importantly, it's a theoretically contraband device that is used, and it's brute force that allows them to solve it. Whereas 456 solves the intellectual puzzle. So all of a sudden, the informational asymmetry totally flips upside down. And unlike business school, it never occurs to him to keep it to himself. So instead, he just tries to get it in time. And just by doing it out in the open, kind of like the blockchain, everybody knows exactly how. I'm saying it's not a bad metaphor, right? And all of a sudden, everybody knows how to do it, and then they do.
And everybody's licking away. Yeah.
So I wonder if, to some extent, there won't be like a theme of keeping secrets versus doing stuff in the open.
Junho keeping the secret is one thing, but he also, and I didn't really realize this until the second time around, he also picks the triangle first. He doesn't say, you go ahead. He very quickly, knowing what the game is going to be and knowing the triangle is the easiest one, is like, I'll take triangle. You should take whichever one you want. And when he says umbrella, he doesn't go, I don't know, is there a good? He's like, lets his friend take clearly the one that is going to kill the most people.
And he almost it stops him and says, but he
then holds
hesitates.
back, right?
Yeah.
So he even like makes a conscious choice to do that.
I think what is interesting to me, I'm going to read this as the way I'm describing it and not as a gigantic plot hole. They're totally cool with them having that lighter. There are so many cameras and guards around that slide is not so big that the of that lighter.
No, I think they're fine with it.
It was just very
I don't
strange.
even think it's a plot hole. I think they're just like, yep, that's fine.
Yeah, it was just kind of weird that they were hiding something that kind of everybody
because
probably
I
was.
think they were worried they would get caught. But it's sort of like, kids hiding things from the teacher and thinking they got away with something when the teacher's like, I totally saw it, but you know what? I'm just not going to make a big deal out of it.
And we have seen, especially in this episode, that this is not a closed loop system. I mean, this is a very big institution that is putting this game on, but the police officer gets in. The North Korean girl was not asleep when she was brought in. The knives are in, the cigarettes, so this is not as tight of a ship. I mean, even with the one player taking one of the guards hostage, like this is not a tight ship, and they're setting up for it to break in a way that actually feels earned.
If there was something I felt unbelievable, it's that the square the supervisor with the square in his face takes his mask off.
Oh, like, right. When the hostage,
because he's being threatened with the hostage, he should know, like, oh, they're going to shoot this guy. I'm not going to take my mask off because then I'll die. I know the rules. But he takes it off anyway, and then he's dead, which of course saves Songwoo, the policeman, because he was about to be literally unmasked, because he was in the wrong place.
Yeah. I really like that dynamic of the police officer showing us what it's like for those guards, because
Yeah.
there's clearly a hierarchy, right? The circles are the lower level, then the square and the triangle. But how do they get there? How do they get that position where they're like kind of living like a prisoner's lifestyle as well? Are they forced into this like the other contestants are?
Oh, that's interesting, because that does, like, if they're kind of like a, I don't know, stormtrooper life, like maybe how they represented Finn in the Star Wars trilogy, it's like, of course, that would justify the sloppy work that they're doing with the guarding and the observation and stuff.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's
true.
I'm very interested in that, the rest of the show.
The meals was the part that struck me, right? The
airline
people,
meals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The people in coach, the players get the coach meal, the cold bun and a bottle of milk. And the people in Comfort Plus, the workers, they get a hot meal, but it's on a tray and it's not that great. I assume somewhere there's a premier first class meal being had by somebody, maybe the guy in the black mask. I have no idea.
Mr. Roboto.
Yeah, Mr. Roboto. But yeah, so any other thoughts?
No, still
Squid
in
Game
it.
103?
I'm going to hold off longer this week, or promise to watch it twice. Because
Watch those first 15 minutes again.
Yeah.
All right. That's Squid Game, episode 3 of season 1. Let's talk about Miami Vice season 1, episode One-Eyed Jack. Now, the reason we're skipping ahead, this is not the next episode after episode 2, is because we're looking for particular guest performances. This is not exactly a guest performance. It's called out in all the stuff I read because even though Edward James Olmos technically appears in the episode before this, he appears very briefly. And in this episode, he cements himself as the new head of the department. So there's events that we didn't see where the previous head loses his job. And now Edward James Olmos, very much Blade Runner era Edward James Olmos, becomes the very not talking a lot head of the department who he's not sure that he gets along with the folks, particularly Crockett and Tubbs.
He's a by the books a rule inside the lines. Even his mustache is inside the lines. I mean, it's
literally.
But also he's a good cop, because during this episode he said, he's the one who busts him, saying like, "Hey man, it's obvious this ain't no crooked cop." By the way, who's the slimy internal affairs guy? I've seen him in a million things.
He is Nick from Cheers, Carla's ex-husband, Nick
Oh my
Tortelli.
gosh, that's amazing. I think I've seen him in some other stuff as well, but yeah, no,
he's been in a bunch of other things.
He definitely
but that's what I read
creeps
as
around like a
most
troll. So anybody watching along with us on this stuff, please do yourself the favor of watching it on the biggest screen you possibly can, so you can see all the strangest little flaws. In an era where
the rain. Are we going to talk about the rain?
Yes,
the rain. I'm glad you guys noticed that too.
on Tubbs. So there's so many inconsistencies. Okay, so the very first opening scene, if you're wondering whether this is about gambling, picture a big fat guy with a big sign on his desk that says "Bet it all" and 5 phones.
A big dollar sign, like 8 white cats. This is the most evil guy.
What do you mean I do gambling? I don't do gambling. What makes you think of that?
I run books.
And he says, "Okay, we'll put the bet on those guys." And then he
On
hangs
those teams.
And then he hangs up, and then the other phone rings, and he answers the phone by saying, "No, the other team." Like there's not enough time for a human to say anything.
Not to mention, he doesn't write any of this down
Right.
anywhere.
And he's like telling people they're making poor decisions, like, which I imagine a bookie normally doesn't do. I don't know. I haven't placed that many bets. In my
And
life.
then cut to Tubbs in a hodgepodge of boy, what a frustrating production day that must have been for them, because sometimes there's rain on his jacket,
On the
sometimes there's
close-up,
not.
it's definitely just started raining, and you see the drops.
There's like 2 spots, then there's 12, then there's none, then
and
there's
then, and it's
one.
clean in all of the other shots. Well, why didn't they redo that? Oh,
But then my favorite is they go into the action set piece where it's very clearly a whole bunch of stunt work, and at one point they're just destroying the office all around.
it's a restaurant.
At a restaurant, but this is upstairs in the
Oh, right,
office.
right.
And so then it cuts to a shot where everybody is just eating in the restaurant, and there's one stunt guy at the salad bar just frozen there. Very clearly his direction was, don't react until they tumble all the way down the stairs. So as all this noise is happening, this guy's just standing there. They tumble down the stairs, and only when they get into his field of view, he goes, oh, and then waits to get clobbered.
I also noticed a woman sitting at one of the tables go.
Just
Like, these people are like beating the crap out of each other. Like, well, I guess they should react.
This big like drunken fight, this like really sloppy, just like literally throwing hands at each other. Not really.
Hey man, it's
Breakaway
Miami.
tables left and right.
Happens all the time, and people they've seen it all. This cafe in Miami. Let me
So
tell you.
on top of that, there's a few things that I really noticed, not the least of which is when I think back to, what was this, 84 or so?
Yeah.
84, 3 different channels if you don't have cable. They did some bold stuff, like, for example, linger for 10 full seconds on That's a Butt. And now let me just pan down these legs on primetime television. Oh,
'Cause you
here's
know what
another
we can
butt.
show a butt. Can't we? There's
That
things we're not
and
allowed to shoot.
cockfighting. Just
Real cockfighting.
Like-
Where the cocks are the cocks are pecking out each other's eyes. Like there's no message at the end of this that says no animals were harmed during the filming of this episode.
But yeah.
I also, and this one isn't quite as egregious as these other two, but Gina comes out of Crockett's boat, and I'm expecting Tubbs to make a like, whoa, and he's like, oh hey Gina, you know?
I assume that was established in some of the episodes that we missed or whatever.
Right, and that's another point. With a couple of exceptions like that, and Castillo's character, I didn't feel like I missed any episodes, really.
Yes, same here. Props to Dennis Farina, cousin Avi from Snatch.
Oh, from Snatch. Yeah.
And I think we might see him this week too.
Yeah, because he gets away. He gets away at the end. Also, props to the token casting of 2 women as Forest Service people, confused by the alligator.
With the alligator, yeah.
And
our comic relief scene. Hey, you can't take my alligator.
That scene for me, as it was unfolding in my head, I was okay. There are 2 ways that the scene ends. They either have a very convenient way to get rid of having to film a live alligator every week, or they are really hoping that this is Poochie for the show, is having an alligator, and they went with the second one.
also,
he feeds him kibbles and bits. Did you notice that?
Yep, and just throws the bag at him. He gets the money. Another thing I noticed,
He's
and
Poochie.
this is one of the things that I kind of enjoy. We talked a little bit ago about, when The Wire went to a widescreen, all the thought that went into reframing all of those shots. It's kind of neat to see them working within the constraints of 4:3. One of those shots, if you scroll through, Bryce, you'll be able to see like the face and a face in the background, and it's so awkward and intense that the next line Edward James almost says is, "Don't ever put your face that close to mine again." But that's
What
a
do you
great
think
shot.
this is? 4-3 safe shooting?
Right, exactly.
I thought the soundtrack for this. We've remarked on, the popular music being used, but the soundtrack on this one was full of hits, like New Girl Now, Honeymoon Suite. I haven't heard that in a minute. You got Eric Clapton in there, Pointer Sisters, yeah.
Also, props to the breakdancing skills of Tubbs.
Oh yeah.
I this is a thread I'm gonna kind of keep an eye on, but I know that you have to kind of do some amount of this with the story of the week, police procedural, but it's very strange. I can see the code in the Matrix of, we're going to introduce a character and they will die at the end of the episode. End of sentence. Like, that is the rule.
But also, this other character may or may not get arrested or die.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's maybe just that's the episodes that we've picked where they kind of end like that. But
by the way, the end of this episode, the slimy dude gets shot. The innocent dude gets put in handcuffs and taken off. And the dude who just committed a murder, they're all like, oh man, why'd you do that? Come on.
That ain't cool.
They don't put him in
On a
cuffs or
boat.
nothing.
Oh man. So good. So good. All right. Any other thoughts on Miami Vice, One-Eyed Jack?
No, but I am increasingly optimistic about this watch. I'm still having a lot of fun.
Our next episode will be the very next episode in sequence, called No Exit, starring Bruce Willis as the guest star, who I don't know where he was in Moonlighting relationship to this.
He was probably he probably had that Hollywood heat right around this time. They were probably working on Moonlighting, and
this is
testing him out.
84, yeah. So yeah, and Moonlighting comes along in 85. So there you go.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. That is Miami Vice, episode 6 and or 7. One-Eyed Jack. And that will wrap it up for us today. Thanks everybody for supporting us at patreon.com/cordkillers. You get Spoilerin time early and often if you're a patron, along with After Talk and a bunch of other perks. So go check that out if you haven't already. Next week, as I mentioned, Miami Vice, No Exit, Squid Game 104, and Silence of the Lambs. After our Hannibal rewatch earlier this year, we're going to see the other Hannibal. I can't even remember his name because he's not the one we watched on TV. No, it's Silence of the Lambs, of course, Miami Vice 107, No Exit, and Squid Game 104. We will spoil you then.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.